Hi, I'm Dr. Laura Blankenship, head of school of San Francisco Girls School, and I'm here with Yvonne Faisal, our Director of Academics, to share with you some of the research on girls' education and how we're incorporating that into our program to create an amazing academic experience for girls. So thank you for listening.
So we think of ourselves as being girl powered. We want to empower girls, and our program is also powered by girls, by women that are leading this effort, but also eventually by the girls themselves. Once they set foot on campus, they will have a role to play in our program. And I want to focus on a few different aspects of girls' education and girls' empowerment. And they are these here. And they actually spell a very nice acronym, CLEAR. Confidence, leadership, experience, the experience of girls in school, authenticity, and role models. And these are some of the key aspects of girls' education that are really powerful. So I want to start with confidence, which is the thing that comes up over and over again in my conversations with girls who have gone to all girls schools, with parents, with our board, and with our faculty and staff. They all talk about this idea of building confidence in girls. And so what is confidence? What makes a girl confident, or anyone confident for that matter? Well, confidence is about taking risks, often failing at trying something new, and then picking yourself up and trying again. And that's what research shows builds confidence. But research also shows that girls have a lot less confidence than boys. And that begins right at high school, usually right around 8th grade, that they start to flag in their confidence about themselves and start to show these behaviors of taking a few less risks and exercising those confidence muscles. And in some areas, subjects like science and math, research shows that girls have similar ability in math and science, for example, but the thing that holds them back, the barrier to their succeeding or persisting in some of these subjects, is that they actually lack confidence in those abilities. And this has been borne out over and over again, that in tests like the PISA test that's taken by 16-year-old students across the world, it shows that girls have believe that their skills are as good as they actually are. So what are some of the contributing factors to this lack of confidence? One is this idea of perfectionism, and a belief that you can't fail. And this is something that society ingrains in a lot of girls, although I know I have as a parent, and I do as an educator, try to work against this idea of perfectionism, that it's okay if it's not perfect, just be good enough. But it's really hard. There's a lot that's working against girls. And by the time that girls are 12, almost half of them believe that they can't fail, that it's just not, they are not allowed to fail, compared to only 18% of them at an earlier age, at say 9 or 10. So that's one of the issues that leads to this flagging confidence. And then stereotype threat, the idea that there are certain things that girls are not good at or shouldn't do, that often shows up in certain situations, so that they start to think about, well, the stereotype says that I am not good at math or not good at science because I'm a girl, and so therefore I'm not going to try that. Or studies have actually shown that sometimes that impacts their ability on a test, where they are reminded that they're of the stereotype threat that they're not good at math, and so they do badly on the math test. And there are lots of ways to work against this once you know it exists, both internally for the girls, but also for the educators who may be seeing this get triggered. And then gender bias is another aspect that causes girls to often lose their confidence, where they might experience gender bias from their teachers, from their peers. There's gender bias in grading, for example. So if you're experiencing gender bias in grading in math, which is one of the most common areas where you see that show up, and you're getting lower grades just because of this bias, you start to think that you're not good at that, and you start to think you start to lose confidence in your ability in that subject area. So gender bias can also contribute to this lack of confidence. So more importantly, how do we build that confidence? So we're going to talk a little bit about how this plays out in our program. But one of the key things, as I mentioned at the beginning, is that you have to try some new things. You have to try something, not be so great at it, keep trying. That really exercises your confidence muscle, that if you can find ways in which you are improving that skill over time, that can really build your confidence in those areas. And embracing failure as just part of the learning experience, that, failing and learning from it, and having ways in which you can reflect on that experience and figure out what you did learn and then try again and continue to learn. And being surrounded by girls. So there's less chance of that stereotype threat happening. What often happens is when you're in a co-ed classroom, and a girl might be, for example, in a computer science class and feel like they're the only girl in the room, that's when stereotype threat often shows up. So being surrounded by girls, or predominantly girls, really generates this sense of belonging and feeling like you belong in this room, this computer science class, this hard math class, or whatever that might be, this leadership experience, that you don't have that stereotype threat anymore that says you're not supposed to be here. And then, of course, we reduce the gender bias. There's no other gender in the room, so you don't have that kind of bias based on gender among peers. So that's a really important component. So I'm going to turn it to Yvonne to talk a little bit about how this idea of building confidence really shows up in our programming.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being with us tonight. This is a copy of our daily schedule, and it's named Daily Schedule, but it's actually how the week proceeds. And so you'll see that there are classes there in the light blue, but I want to talk about some of the other spaces. So you notice that there's a break straight across. Having a common break and building community is a really important part of building confidence, because we're hanging out with each other, we know each other, and we see each other both when we're learning and when we're having fun. Connections, which is on Tuesdays, is a time where we are sharing our stories. So a teacher might give a talk about something that they experienced or tried and learned from it. And so we are role modeling for the students opportunities where maybe we have failed in the past and what we've taken away from it. And we'll also have that time to bring in role models and speakers from out in the community, again, so that we're sharing stories with the girls and they're seeing how everybody gets to where they're at. They don't necessarily have to be there right now. It's part of a narrative. Pathways classes, which happen on Friday, is an intentional place for us to work on things like design thinking or mindfulness and matters, and building up some of the soft skills and some of the thinking skills that will feed into your class experience and build your confidence. We also have studio time, which you'll see on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And this is both an equity issue and a confidence issue. We really value collaboration. We want students to be able to use their time wisely and to have access to working with teachers and with each other. So studio time is unstructured time, and when a student can meet with their teachers, a student can work together on a chemistry lab write-up, or a student can work on an essay that they have due tomorrow. But at the heart of it, again, we're learning together in community. And you're seeing what other students are working on, and you're seeing what you're working on. And it builds this sort of sense that we're all working on something and they're all different things. And again, that's a confidence boost because you're seeing that other students are looking for that help. It also is really normalizing the fact that you don't have to stay after school or come early in order to be able to have that special help. We value it. We think that you need help, and it's so important that we think that you need help and that you're going to be giving help back and forth with your peers, that we've built time into the school day for it. And then I want to talk about this orange block in the middle, Wednesdays. So Experiential Days is our opportunity to really put a lot of what Laura just talked about into practice. So Experiential Days, which was the E, and she'll talk even more about it in a moment, but is a chance for us to try new and novel learning experiences. So Wednesdays, we are not in a traditional classroom. We are out doing different things. So one experiential day may look like heading over to the DeYoung Museum in the morning to look at how artists have rendered human anatomy over the years, and then coming back to campus and working with our computer science and our visual arts teachers so that we've got our hands-on and our technology-aided devices for doing sketching. And then the following week in their biology class, they're going to be using those skills as they do a lab write-up. Again, we're trying to look at how to build this confidence by having multiple entry points, multiple points of engagement, no matter who you are. Laura's going to talk a little bit more about our next part of the acronym, leadership.
So I want to talk about leadership, which is really important to us. In girls' schools, girls lead everything, and that's really important for a number of reasons. One is that girls see girls and women as leaders, so they just get used to the idea that if you're going to have a leader, it's going to be a woman, because that's what they get used to. And so some of the statistics on this that play out over time is that 93% of girls in girls' schools say that they have opportunities to lead, which is almost everyone in a girls' school. And then 80% of girls' school grads continue to hold leadership roles after graduation. They go on to lead in college. They go on to lead in their careers. So this being able to practice leadership and see leaders plays out later in life. And so they have these opportunities to really try out this leadership experience. And then what we are doing is building on that practice and having some opportunities for some direct instruction around leadership so that, for example, in some of those pathways classes, we'll have opportunities for girls to learn more about their own leadership styles and work on those leadership skills. We'll also, bring in leaders to talk to girls about how they took on their leadership role and what they've learned along the way. And I already have plans for having informal conversations with students from the very first year in the beginning to talk about how they want to build their leadership skills, whether that's big L leadership, I want to go be a CEO of a company, or I want to be the best at whatever job I have or career I have, and small L leadership and kind of lead something differently, maybe not lead people. So we'll be building in all of these components into our program because we think it is important to take advantage of this ability for girls to take on these leadership opportunities. So I want to talk a little bit about experience here, and the experience in particular of learning in a classroom. And so there's been a lot of research by the National Coalition of Girls' Schools and others who are interested in especially improving outcomes for girls in certain fields where they're still underrepresented, of figuring out how best to motivate and engage girls and make sure that they have the opportunities that boys have or that in some of these fields. And so there's a couple of different areas that research has pointed to that we're really leaning into at San Francisco Girls School that show better outcomes for girls in a lot of these areas. But in general, these are actually good practices across the board, no matter who you're educating, but they've been shown to be really powerful for girls in particular. So our curriculum is really interdisciplinary. And that's been important for girls to show, new contexts for subjects. It's often more relevant and more motivating for students and for girls in particular. And one example that I like to think about is the idea of taking a subject like math and marrying it with a subject like history. You might be someone who loves history and just thinks it's amazing and thinks math is awful. But if you start to teach math through history, you start to see how math can really support your love of history and really make that a more powerful subject area for you. And so combinations like that really show different sides of those disciplines and different ways into other subjects that you might not think of. So you might leverage your math in order to do some data science research in history. And there's lots of classes that you'll see when Yvonne shares a little bit about our courses and our curriculum that really bridge these different disciplines together. And that's something we will continue to build over time as we build out our curriculum and hire our faculty and see what the girls are really passionate about and interested in. Hands-on and applied work again and again is really important for students, that they need to see how this theory that they're learning in the classroom really gets applied in the real world. And so we have lots of opportunities. You can see from the Experiential Learning Days that that's one big opportunity to do these this kind of hands-on and applied and contextualized work. But we also will be building that into our courses. We want relevant and real-world projects within our courses. And this kind of hands-on and applied work is really important for women. There was one of my favorite bits of research is a long-term longitudinal study of women who were in an engineering curriculum. And about 20 years ago, they switched it to be this really hands-on interdisciplinary curriculum for the first year and a half of the program. That had a tremendous impact on those women. They were more likely to persist in an engineering career. They have really strong memories of that program. They remembered and sustained the knowledge of that curriculum for a long time. So it was a really important component of that program and really helped keep women in a field where they're very underrepresented. The other aspect of research that I find really interesting is this idea of human impact. And again, research bears out over and over again that girls are attracted to this idea of how does this help people? How is what I'm doing in the classroom, how is this career, this field going to really make a difference in the world? And I think that's, that goes back a little bit to leadership in that, girls often want to become leaders so that they can make a difference. You heard a couple of the girls say that. And so when you can tie the curriculum to showing how it really does benefit people, that can often be very motivating for girls. So for example, I teach computer science. There's a lot of work around figuring out how does, a computer program, how can that really benefit someone? And so I've taught classes where we do things like design apps for good, where the actual purpose of the app is to help your community. And so you start with that premise in mind, that you're building something that will help people, and you learn programming along the way. And so taking that approach of starting with how does this help people, and then figuring out how to build the skills from there. And it's a very motivating way to engage with girls. And so I'm going to let Yvonne share a little bit more about some of our specific courses.
Thanks, Laura. I'm going to add a couple of specific examples from that last slide from my own experience. My degrees are in math and physics and electrical engineering, and in teaching those classes, if you think back to your own experience, maybe in high school, or if girls are listening, what will be coming, but often physics is about impact and collisions and forces, right? And often taught with two cars, or a car and an SUV hitting each other. But if you switch this context so that you can combine some of those things Laura was just talking about, the human connection and relevance, and instead you talk about two field hockey players like running into each other, right? And about the force that it takes for a concussion. And then you tie in the brain science that goes with repeated concussions, and you can add layers of complexity. These are ways that we're really looking at how to change the narrative of where that content has traditionally been described and explained and used, and really bringing relevance to our studies. You'll see some other courses on here. These are all courses that are being offered next year for our 9th graders. And as you look through those titles, I want to highlight a few different things. One is you'll definitely see some interdisciplinary work, right? So the epidemiology class with disease and distribution and determinants is really a mix, not just of the science on how things spread, but also bringing in math and bringing in data and looking at those pieces. The Global Sustainable Development and Action course is our history for 9th grade, where students get to choose one issue that they really care deeply about, and learn their research skills, learn how to do critical assessment of content of sources, whether it's a first source or a secondary source, within a context that they got to choose. Another element of that confidence is when girls get to be the narrative or the author of their own narrative. And when they are authors, it means that they have agency, that they're making choices and that they're expressing their voice on what they care about. And so built into many of these classes is that idea of girls exercising agency and really crafting and choosing courses that are important to them. Another highlight that I want to pull out here is the fourth bullet down, speculative fiction and alternate worlds. Girls have choice in another way. We are not teaching all English electives or even all history electives the same thing. They get to learn that they get to choose a context. They're going to pick up the English skills. But if a student is interested in sci-fi, that's a great entry point, whereas another student could be interested in historical novels about heroines, which is another one of our electives for this next year. Mixed in are some great visual arts and computer science classes, podcasting, again, tying some of the best technology that we have out there with getting to tell their stories and getting to tell other people's stories. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of that voice and choice that they have later, but put into these courses are the ideas that we've been talking about on what is best for girls' education and what is best for education in general.
Thanks, Yvonne. So I want to talk a little bit about authenticity, and one of the things that comes up again is this ability when you're a girl in a girls' school to really be who you are and express yourself as you are and do whatever it is you want to do. So a little bit about that choice that Yvonne was talking about. And these numbers come from a few different studies. The first and the last number come from a big survey that gets done at a lot of different schools. It's the High School Student Engagement Survey. And what it does is it looks at the kind of components of school that are hard to measure by grades. So things like how connected you are to your peers, how connected you are to your teachers, how academically challenged you feel, whether you're motivated or not. And so one of the things that they look at, or some of the areas that they look at, are whether you can be your authentic self in your school, whether you have that ability to express yourself for whoever you are. And in girls schools are about 89% of them said in this survey that they feel like they can express themselves and be who they really are. And that's compared to about 72% in co-ed public schools. So it's much higher than it is in co-ed schools. And then the last number is 87% feel like they can freely express their opinions. So they feel like their opinions are valued so that they can, again, be authentic about what they think and feel free to express that. And that's a little bit related to this middle number here, which is a little bit my own invention from looking at a bunch of different studies around whether women speak up in the classroom or at work and what that looks like. There's been a lot of research around this over the years. Deborah Tannen is someone who's done a lot of research around how women talk at work and how women talk outside of work and whether they're allowed to talk if they get interrupted and things like that. And this whole idea of women being more quiet and being interrupted more in groups, especially in class situations or work, actually starts when they're 4. So this 148% comes from a short little research study of 4-year-olds in playgroups. And when there are boys present, the more boys there are, the more girls get interrupted. So once you eliminate the boys, you get about 148% more conversational interactions of girls. So the girls speak more, speak to each other more. They don't get interrupted. There's no boys to interrupt them. It's much more engaging and conversational. They don't get shut down. There's some other research. There was an article in the Washington Post recently about women talking at work, and there was one somewhere else that I think I have in my resource slide about the impact of Zoom and how Zoom is just perpetuating these same dynamics, where the more men there are in the room, the less likely it is that women are speaking or they get interrupted more often. So girls in girls' schools learn how to use their voice, and they have the ability to be themselves, to express what they think without being interrupted, and by being able to engage with each other very freely. So I'm going to let Yvonne talk a little bit about how that shows up in the ability for girls to pursue their passions and be who they want to be.
One thing we hear a lot, and we've seen a lot in our experiences with students in school, is this idea of being able to express who you are or be authentic and be able to talk about yourself is actually a little bit of a double-edged sword, because it lends this idea, or as we talk about it, it lends this idea that a girl should know who they are. And high school is actually a place where you're figuring that out. It's a dynamic sense of self as you are learning and growing and trying on different hats, trying on different interests and passions. And so one of the things that's really important as we talk about that authentic voice is that it is also authentic to express when you are uncertain or when you are figuring things out, or authentic to express when you have changed who you are. A way that we are really trying to honor that authenticity within their course of study over 4 years is that in the junior and senior year, the girls will have the opportunity to craft their own individualized course of study. So as they're looking at the graduation requirements, they can choose one of these 5 themes to really put their course schedules together and dig deep into a topic that they may be interested in. So social good, design, business, and applied science, pretty straightforward. Exploration is actually a bucket when they really are not quite ready to pick one of those things. And we're really honoring that fact that exploration is a really valid and important choice in high school. And so that's one of the things that you can actually intentionally choose, is to continue to explore those. This will tie into their junior fellowship as well as their senior capstone project, and help them craft, again, that narrative for as they're moving forward, whether that's looking at their college admissions, looking at potential future career paths, and or being able to try something and eliminate it and know that that's not where you want to go. So this individualized course of study is another chance for girls to exercise their agency as well as grow their confidence and continue to experience all that high school should offer.
Thanks, Yvonne. So the last aspect of girls' education that I want to focus on is this idea of role models, which is super important across a number of different fields, that it's important for girls to really have mentors and role models that they can look up to. For us, the faculty serve as the primary role models. They are the leaders in the classroom, and they are there to support and nurture all of these interests, build confidence, build leadership skills, and help girls really take on those challenges that they want to take on and challenge themselves. So they are our primary role models. But we also want to make sure that we are exposing students to a diverse range of female role models across a lot of different disciplines. So we will have lots of opportunity for mentors to come in that connections time on experiential learning days, where they may come in. We may also go to other places and see female role models in their place of work, so they can see how different careers really look on the ground. And that's really important. We also want to build over time the opportunity for stronger mentorship. So that can come in the form, as Yvonne said, we'll have a junior fellowships and senior capstone projects, and those offer opportunities for us to partner with role models in the community that our students can work with and develop a mentorship relationship with. And of course, our students themselves, as they get older, will become future role models for the younger students in in our school and will hopefully serve as future role models going forward for other women that they interact with and other young girls that they interact with. So this idea of putting role models out there for girls is really important. Girls really need to see how careers play out, how one gets from point A to point B, and see lots of different pathways to those careers. It's not always a straight line. Sometimes there are obstacles in the way. Sometimes you change your mind. And so the more women we can put in front of girls, that really shows them that there are lots of different ways to achieve success and lots of different ways to define success. You can really help girls sort of figure out and navigate what they want to do with their lives and see, how they can get from where they are now as students sitting in a classroom to a career in space, in physics, as a government leader, anything that they might want to do.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to learn more about our research and about our school, please see our website at sfgirls.org. Thank you so much.